This video contains the solution for the exercise in Lesson 09. The directions say that we should create a new project at the C Begin 1 Lesson 09 exercise folder. So let's go ahead and create a new project. And make sure to have C Begin 1 Lesson 09, and then I'm going to merely type in exercise. And this will tell us that the project will be created in this location, which is great. So let's go ahead and hit OK. And the first thing that we're told to do is to create an application that has 4 sub-procedures or functions that do each of the following. First of all, calculate the tax amount given a taxable amount and tax rate, both of which should be input from the form via text boxes. So let's go ahead and add some text boxes to our form. And I'm going to add a couple labels too, just so we can make it look good. So in our properties window, let's go ahead and name this taxable amount. And we'll call this txt taxable amount. Whoops. Let's not put that in the text field. Let's put that in the name field. There we go. And then we'll want to label this as the tax rate. So we'll call this txt tax rate. And although it doesn't tell us we have to, I'm going to go ahead and add a button, because there's really no good way to do this unless we have a button somewhere here on our form. And I'm just going to call this btn OK. You can call this whatever you want. So let's go ahead and double click our OK button. And one of the first things that we'll do is create a function, and it will calculate the tax amount, and we'll pass in the taxable amount and the tax rate. Now, like the functions that we created in the video and that you've seen up to this point, these are going to be pretty simple. So I'm going to have only one line, which is return taxable amount times tax rate. And so then in my click event, I'll go ahead and do a dim taxable amount as double, dim tax rate as double, and dim tax amount as double. So then let's go ahead and put taxable amount equals double dot parse. Whoops, that would be txt taxable amount dot text. And then tax rate equals double dot parse txt rate dot text. Whoops. Great. Okay. Now tax amount equals calculate tax amount, and we're going to pass in. And did you notice how it's really neat? They pop up the little help for you, so you can remember all of the parameters for the functions that you create. And just like any other function that you would see or that you would use in Visual Studio, the ones that are built into Visual Basic. So we'll put in here taxable amount. And I just want to clarify one thing as well. In most of my examples, the parameters just happen to be the same name as what I've dimensioned those variables as. That doesn't have to be the case. I mean, you can name your variables and your parameters for your functions completely different things. There's no relationship whatsoever. It sometimes in my mind remove some of the ambiguity as to what the purpose of it is if I keep things named the same, because their local scope will make sure that you don't override a value or anything like that. So let's go ahead and tax rate. So that finishes the first step. The next step is to calculate the total of the taxable amount and the tax amount. And although it didn't specify it as such, I'm going to call this the subtotal. And so we'll create another function called and what we'll do is called calculate subtotal, and then we'll pass in the taxable amount and we'll also pass in the tax amount. And so here we'll have a one-line function again, and we'll make it really simple. Taxable amount times, oh, whoops, I'm sorry, plus tax amount. And so now in our function, we'll have subtotal equals calculate subtotal. We'll pass in the taxable amount and then the tax amount. So that satisfies our second requirement. The third requirement is create a procedure that calculates the grand total of the shipping amount and the total, and the shipping amount is $20. So let's go ahead and create another variable, which is grand total as double. And so let's go down, create another function. Whoops, sorry about that. Called grand total. And we'll pass in the subtotal. And this should be actually as double. Okay, so grand total, you pass in the subtotal as double and returns a double, and we merely just add 20 onto the subtotal. So our grand total equals, and I'm sorry I didn't follow my naming convention here, calculate grand total is the name of my function, so we'll want to use that here. And we'll pass in the subtotal. So that satisfies our third requirement, and then our last requirement is to display the grand total in a message box. But we want to also create a procedure for that, and so I'm going to wrap our procedure here as a sub display result, and our sub will not return any values, but it will display a value. So we'll do a message box dot show, and we can even be fancy and put the grand total is, and I'll even use an underscore character from the previous video, or the previous lesson rather, and that'll just continue our line. And then we'll want to use our format statement that we learned about in the video for this lesson. We'll take grand total and then show it as currency. And the last thing we'll need to do is use our call statement to call our display result and pass in our grand total. So now, if we're lucky, if we did everything right, let's go ahead and run our application. Looks like it compiled nicely. So our taxable amount, let's do something really simple like 100, and then our tax rate will be 0.725, and we'll click OK. And I think our calculation is off somewhere here. So let's take a look at our source code. No, actually, I think that was absolutely right. Here, let's run it again. I think I typed in a value different than I thought I was typing in. So let's go 100 and then 0.0725. So that's like 7.25% on tax. So let's go ahead and click OK. Last time I typed in 0.7, which would have been 72% tax, which would have been horrible. Obviously, nobody in the country is quite, or in the world is quite that oppressive. So the grand total is 127. That accounts for the $7.25 of tax, $20 shipping charge, and $100 of the taxable amount. So this is absolutely correct. Sorry about that. But that should pretty much be the solution. And I hope you got pretty close, or at least learned a little bit more about functions. In this simplistic case, it really didn't behoove us to use functions and procedures. But imagine what if we would have added some business rules around the shipping amount, like if the taxable amount is a certain amount, then we charge this amount, and if it's over that amount, then we charge something different. In that case, the business rules would change frequently. We might want to keep that in a different function so that if there's other parts of our application, if we had a much bigger application, it would make sense to do it that way. So thank you. Hope you got it right.